Good afternoon, and thanks for joining me for my weekly AMA this week. And today I thought I would talk, while I give you the opportunity to join me and ask me questions about digital marketing or online business or anything about my journey. I'm going to chat a little bit about resilience because this is something that impacts all of us. And I think it's something that is good to understand a little bit more, or at least my understanding of it. So, let's start off with what actually is resilience. Resilience is being able to cope with different challenges that might arise, or sudden changes, unexpected changes that you weren't prepared for, or somebody just kind of dumped on you, or maybe circumstances ended up creating. And, sometimes we can have a really difficult time dealing with these things. Maybe we get overwhelmed, or maybe we, want to go and hide, we want to put our head under the covers and just not deal with it. Or, we just immerse ourselves in watching movie after movie after movie, or playing video games, or going and partying, or different things like that. And it's kind of like this, I think, underlying sort of mindset of, oh, well, maybe if I don't deal with it and face it, it'll just go away. But I'm sure you probably know that that doesn't actually happen. Not if it's big enough to be affecting you. So what if you had the resilience of a mushroom? That might sound like a kind of a funny question to ask, but mushrooms find opportunities to grow anywhere. They might grow under a tree, they might grow near a building, they might just grow randomly in a variety of different places. And the reason why mushrooms came to me is because recently my partner and I had gone on one of our regular nature walks, and we ended up coming across this tree, this fallen tree that it was still in a piece that was probably like 6 to 8 feet long, and it was completely covered with mushrooms. And it wasn't like clusters, although, when you look on the ground and stuff like that, you can usually see clusters of mushrooms where they're in these like sort of rounded kind of clumps. But these were just spread out through all along the tree. And it was quite incredible to see. I shared a picture of it in one of my posts recently, actually. But, mushrooms are very adaptable. They don't need much in order to grow from their circumstances. They obviously need to get nutrients, just like we do, but it's, oh, hi Deborah. Thanks for joining me. And they just don't need those perfect conditions to grow in. They're probably one of the more adaptable type of plants that are out there. Well, okay, now I guess not really a plant, a fungi, but they're hugely adaptable, and they are so so what's the word I'm looking for? They're so beneficial to nature because they help to break everything down. And we can kind of look at ourselves like how much are we like mushrooms, because how adaptable are we? How easily are we able to respond to the different experiences that we have? As human beings, we often have this tendency to be very sort of rigid. It's like, well, I like my routine, I like my schedule, I like how things are, I don't want anything to change. And as soon as somebody behaves in a way that we don't expect, or something changes unexpectedly in our routine, or we suddenly are being put on to change in some way, we kind of dig our heels in and we're like, no, 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 no. And we just have so much resistance. But one thing I have discovered in life is that change is the only thing that's constant, and challenges are things that we are going to face throughout our life no matter what. We can't go through life without challenges, and we can't go through life without changes. So the more we're able to adapt to whatever is showing up in our life, the more we're able to accept it, the less we're going to feel like we're suffering. And it just helps to make life so much simpler. Now, am I an expert in doing this? No, I'm not, but it is something that I am continually practicing. Being able to accept things exactly as they are is not easy, because often how we perceive things as they are, when it's a challenge or a problem or whatever, our automatic reaction is, I don't like this, and I don't want this, and I want things to change and shift into a place where I can feel better. But ultimately, we have to try to find a way to accept what is before we can move to something else. Once we can get into that place of acceptance, then we can start looking at it's like, okay, it is what it is. Because it really doesn't make any sense to resist what is, because it is what it is. You can't change what already is. So when you kind of realize that, and it's like, okay, well, what's happened has already happened. I can't do anything about it. But now, how can I choose to respond? Which is different from reacting. Reacting comes from emotion, where we're not mentally engaged with it. It's just, we just automatically act out in some way, whether it's through escape, whether it's through dumping on somebody else, whether, I don't know, some other way that we might react. But when we respond, it means that we are choosing to take responsibility for what happened. Not, and when I say take responsibility, I'm not saying we're taking blame or that we're at fault. But, we're all connected energetically. And so we all play some role in whatever happens. And so when we take responsibility and we just choose to accept where things are at, then we can choose to respond and be like, okay, so this is what has happened. Now what? Is there some other action that I can take? And maybe there might be a few different options you can take. Maybe you can talk to somebody and get different perspectives. Maybe you can ask yourself different questions to help you look at things a little differently and find maybe different solutions. Or perhaps it's something that there isn't anything that can be done about it. And so maybe the only thing that can happen is that you have to choose to surrender. And then you just allow whatever it is that happens. Which is, again, not necessarily easy to do, but ultimately being able to do this helps us to not have to suffer as much. But there's different ways that we can help ourselves to process and move through times of challenge, times of change, where we can start that shifting process. And sometimes it won't happen really quickly. And sometimes it can happen really quickly. But one of the things that could happen, or one of the things that could help, is doing journaling. And it's journaling about not so much like woe is me, I'm a victim kind of journaling, but at the same time it's like, okay, well, this is how I feel, this is how I'm perceiving things, this is what I feel like I'm experiencing right now. And then maybe while you're journaling, you can maybe think of questions you can ask yourself, not necessarily to get the answer right then and there, but just, well, okay, I'll give you an example. I heard a bit of a promotion earlier today by somebody who his name is Jim Quick. And he suffered a brain injury when he was a child and struggled with learning for his entire childhood life till he was 18. And then when he was 18, he ended up talking to somebody who helped change his perspective just a little bit. As well as he ended up seeing a quote from Albert Einstein that said, I think it was the thinking that created the problem is not the same thinking that's going to help solve the problem. I probably don't, that's not verbatim, but it's essentially that was what the quote is. And so Jim started, first started asking himself, well, what exactly is my problem? And so he started saying, well, I'm a slow learner. I have difficulty learning. I can't remember things, telling him stuff like that, telling himself things like that. But then it was like something just kind of switched and he started asking himself, okay, well, If I have trouble learning the way that people normally learn, how can I learn differently? How can I learn to learn differently? So he found questions to ask himself to sort of set him on a different path, of a different direction of how he could look at things. And so that's something that we can kind of try to do ourselves when we're journaling. Or, it doesn't have to be journaling. You could even just be sitting there sort of thinking about what happened and maybe meditating, reflecting on it, and that type of thing. And again, the answer is probably not going to come immediately. But now, when you ask that question, you're putting it out in the universe. And then the universe can help bring the resources to you, the people to you, that can help you with finding the answer. Other things that can help us with processing and become more resilient is things like self-care and self-love. So when we do practices where we nurture our well-being, that can help us to recover from the shock, I guess, of these challenges, of these problems. And doing other practices like mind-body practices, when yoga is done as a mind-body practice and not just as simply as a physical practice, or any body movement practice where there's that mind-body connection, and you're really focusing on that mind-body connection, and so therefore you're not getting caught up in those thoughts that can create this sort of spiraling effect of bringing us down into this place of not feeling resilient. And energy practices are also a really good way of helping move the energy. So Donna Eden is one of the people that I really appreciate in the teachings that she shares. And she's got tons of videos on YouTube with all these different little energy practices. And just so you have her spelling, if you do want to look her up on YouTube, it's Donna, Donna, and her last name is Eden, Eden. And she's got all these little different techniques. Her and her daughters share all these different techniques that help to manage energy, which can really help us to feel more balanced, more calm, less anxious, more grounded, all of these different things. And Qigong is also a really good energy practice too for helping to move energy. And you may have also heard of tapping, also known as emotional freedom technique. And this is a technique that helps to also process whatever is going on. And this works more with the thoughts, because you start off with, you tap on the certain meridians on your body. And at the same time, you start off with saying all the lower vibrational thoughts you might be having. And then after that, you start moving to the more positive thoughts. And you'd have to look up teachers who share about that to understand more of what I'm talking about. But at any rate, it is a way to process those challenging feelings and thoughts that might be going through us. Is there anything else? Oh, yeah. So another really good way to help support yourself with coming back to center and becoming more resilient in situations is practicing gratitude, practicing appreciation, and noticing the abundance that's around you. And now this can be really difficult when you're already in that low vibrational state, but that's actually a really good time to do it. You know, there's a lot of things, no matter where we are in life, there's always something to be grateful for. There's always something to appreciate. And there's usually always some level of abundance in our life. For example, a few weeks ago, I don't even really know why, but I was sort of in this sort of low energy. I was really tired. I was just feeling this low energy, heavy energy. And I was struggling to find, anything that in my life that I thought was a win or that was abundance or that I could be grateful for, or any of those kinds of things. And then a thought popped into my head. Go back to the basics. So what that meant for me is, well, I have my eyesight. I have the ability to be able to see the amazing, beautiful things in our world. I have my hearing. I can hear wonderful music or the sounds of the birds. I have my taste. I can taste amazing foods, delicious, amazing foods. I can smell amazing aromas of flowers or freshly cut grass or something like that. This is very basic, but these are things that we can all find to be grateful for. But the thing is, you have to not just simply say them. You have to really be able to feel that appreciation. And when it comes to abundance, it's like a lot of people think of abundance in terms of monetary or material kind of items, which is a form of abundance, but abundance can be so much more than that. To me, abundance is, I got to be able to sit in the warmth of the sun today. I got to see these beautiful cloud formations in the sky. I had somebody treat me really, really well at the store. Or somebody just gave me this really genuine smile on my walk. Those are all forms of abundance. And when we start to notice things like that, it shifts our energy and we can feel a lot better about whatever else might be going on in our life. And the last thing that I want to add is that, not only are mushrooms resilient, but also if we look at water. What happens with water when it encounters an obstacle or encounters a challenge? Does it just stop and be like, no, I'm not going any further? No, it finds a way to go over it or around it or through it or under it, whatever it might be. So I just leave you with the analogies of the mushroom and the water. So, you know, with all of this about resilience, this is something that is really important to bring into business as well. You know, and I'm really noticing this with my digital marketing business, because there's always different things that come up. There can be different challenges, different unexpected things that happen, like social media, for example. You know, I've had different issues with, with social media, where it's like maybe I've had difficulty with posting something, or you know, there was some other thing that ended up coming up, and um, you know, I could get frustrated and say, ugh, the hell with this particular platform. I'm not going to use it anymore, because I never seem to encounter anything but difficulties with it. Or I could be like, okay, well, this is not working right now. Let's maybe try it again in about an hour. It's frustrating when it doesn't work the way you want it to, or, you know, maybe because somebody deems that your post is not valuable enough, like somebody in the higher up deems that your post isn't worthwhile enough, and so they don't promote it, or maybe they end up deleting it. Because I've seen, I'm not sure if that's happened to me exactly, but I've heard of people who have shared posts and then their post got deleted, and they're like, why? It's like and they're not really given any explanation. So there's all these different things that can come up. And, you know, in business in general, there's always going to be these different things that come up that we end up having to deal with. And we can either react to them, or we can try to find a way to respond to them. And every time that we can find a way to respond to them, we learn something new. We are able to grow a little bit more. So, you know, if you have any comments or questions that you'd like to share on about the topic of resilience and how it may have applied to you in your life or in your business, or if there's anything that you'd like to know that, you know, you might would like me to maybe elaborate on a little bit more, I would love to see your questions, see your comments, and connect with you. So this is a weekly AMA, so you have the opportunity to join me every week on Wednesdays at 2:30 p.m. Mountain Time. And if I don't have people joining me to ask me questions, then I'm going to have a topic of some sort that I'll be chatting about. So until next week, take care.